Welcome everyone to our roundtable discussion on boosting farmers' voices in climate policy and action. My name is Rosemary Malfi. I am the Pollinator Network Coordinator at NOFA MAP and also a member of the Policy Department. And this presentation will be with the following advocates: Marty Dagoberto, Chelsea Gazzillo, Stephen Taranto, Jeff Cole, Nataka Creighton, and Ariana Taylor Stanley. All right, but before we jump in, I have a few slides to share with you. The first is letting you know that NOFA Mass is strengthening our commitment to racial equity and justice by examining whiteness and dismantling systems of white supremacy that are part of many dominant systems, including our agriculture and food systems.
Hello?
Hello? Was someone saying hello? Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. We also want to honor the Indigenous land stewards who are the original occupants of the land on which we are currently living, farming, and residing. Please use the link that you see on the slide, and that will also drop into the chat to find the area where you farm and live and identify the original stewards of those lands. We also want to call everyone, especially white allies and co-conspirators, to action on a few items to assist BIPOC-led organizations. Those actions are listed on the slides. Just going to take a beat so you can read those. There are also 2 events taking place today for Spanish speakers and for BIPOC members. And you can see the details here. You can also find the details for those events in the program. I think we're all familiar with Zoom norms now, but just so you know, this account is set to mute participants upon entry. If you wish to speak at some point during the discussion, you just have to press the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen, and then we ask that you then again mute yourself so that we avoid background noise while other folks are talking. You can use the chat function during this workshop, but we'll also be, depending on the number of people in the room, you'll be able to come off mic and also chat and talk. And then I just want to note that this session is being recorded. We have a number of generous sponsors who make our conference possible, and I encourage you to purchase from them, and when you do, to let them know that you appreciate their support of NOFA Mass. So here are some of those, and here are some more. Thank you. Thank you, sponsors. We've also got some incredible items to bid on in our online auction. You can visit the link at the bottom of the slide. We'll also put that in the chat, or you can text NOFA to 855-202-2100 to see the lineup of items. Please also take a moment to explore the virtual vendor marketplace, where there is a lot of great information and some generous discount codes for conference attendees. Most importantly, we want to thank you for spending your weekend with us, and especially to our NOFA members who make our education and advocacy work possible. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to turn things over to the NOFA Mass Policy Director, Marty Dagoberto.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Well, folks, I'm really glad to see so many here for this important conversation, because farmers are on the front line of climate destabilization, and we believe they're the best place to monitor impacts and help us shape and implement solutions for climate action. And so this roundtable is designed as an opportunity for advocates represented by the organizers you're about to meet to hear thoughts and suggestions of farmers and conference attendees, with the end goal of identifying some of the most prominent opportunities and challenges for incorporating farmer voices and experiences into the climate policy conversation. And really, we want to help form some initial proposals and opportunities for collaboration between our organizations in order to address these challenges. So what do farmers need in order to be more engaged in climate policy? How can we as advocates in Massachusetts better work together to hold up their voices in the climate conversation? This is what we're going to be talking about today. We'll start with some very brief introductions of our advocacy organizations here represented, and then dive right into discussion, starting with thoughts from the farmers in attendance. And after about 30 or 40 minutes, we'll make some space for further discussion in breakout rooms on different focus areas that might emerge in our initial conversation. So I want to just get right into introductions. Before I'll introduce we'll introduce our panelists, or rather our advocates. I do want to recognize that we have several legislative offices that registered and may be in attendance or will be this hour. We're expecting Senator Comerford's office, Jared Friedman, Representative Schmid's office, Jessica Catton, Rep. Hannah Kane, Senator Roush, her office with Emma Hunter, Andrea with Rep. Dykema's office, and if there are any others that I'm missing, please put them in the chat. But I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you all today. Thank you for being here. My name is Marty Dagoberto, and I'm the Policy Director of NOFA Mass. And hopefully, since you're all here at the NOFA Mass Winter Conference, you have some idea of what we do. But I like to say that we're a network of gardeners, growers, farmers, landscapers, foodies, and food activists who work together through education and advocacy to increase the production and availability of nutrient-dense food and living landscapes coming from healthy living soil. And this conference is a big part of that. Our work directly on climate policy, since I've been policy director, has largely centered around the formation of a healthy soils program, which was established by the legislature last year, and then working with our coalition partners to provide funding for that program. We've been a member of the Mass Renews Alliance, formerly Green New Deal Massachusetts, working to help support their food justice bills as part of a intersectional approach to addressing the climate crisis. And really, we've been, primarily following the lead of our national partners. You'll hear from NSAC. We also have the National Organic Coalition and Organic Farmers Association. We work with them to lobby Congress and advocate for conservation programs and to support climate bills that are being considered. And really wanted to help bring together the advocates we have here today to see how, like I said, we can better work together as a vehicle for farmers' voices in climate policy. So with that, I'll pass it off to my colleagues here. We'll start with Chelsea at American Farmland Trust, and then Jeff at Food System Collaborative. Chelsea?
Yeah, thank you, Marty. As Marty mentioned, my name is Chelsea Gazzillo. I go by she, her pronouns. I live in Holyoke, which is unceded Pocumtuck, Nipmuc land, and I'm the New England Policy Manager for American Farmland Trust. I'm also a member of the Holyoke Conservation Commission and a member of the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective. However, I'm here today representing AFT. AFT is the nation's leading conservation organization dedicated to protecting farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. Established in 1985, AFT's New England office works to save the land that sustains us across the region. In the Commonwealth, we strive to help farmers adopt climate-smart ag practices through a variety of different programmatic work, including, but certainly not limited to, partnering with NOFA Mass, UMass, and the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources to run the Massachusetts Coordinated Soil Health Program. We have an agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as USDA NRCS, to support 7 conservation planners who work with farmers across the state to create farm conservation plans and utilize the various funding sources offered through the agency. Finally, we also have a powerful team of women who are leading the largest soil health project in New England that support farmers in adopting regenerative agricultural practices. One of these women is my colleague, Caro Roselle, who is with us here today. Of course, none of our programmatic work in the region is possible without strong political support from our legislative champions, both at the federal and state levels. Our advocacy efforts in Massachusetts strive to create systemic change and to continuously ensure that producers across the state have the resources they need to prosper now and in the future. As such, this year, we have seen the Massachusetts legislature pass sweeping policies that ensure farmers are a critical part of the state's efforts to fight climate change. Sorry, this all happened in 2021, I forgot that it's now 2022. We are exceptionally grateful to legislators on this call who have championed our efforts to pass legislation that created a state soil health program. We are also also grateful to our legislators who made sure that funding is available to the state soil health initiatives by including soil health in the final American Rescue Act plan proposal signed by Governor Baker in December. We look forward to continuing to work with the governor and his administration to ensure that funding is equitably allocated to support farmers. And as Marty mentioned, when we look at climate policy, we must look at it as an intersectional, we must look at all the things that intersect with climate policy. And so as an organization, we are committed to ensuring that our programmatic work and our policy advocacy initiatives advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our agricultural sector. We are extremely supportive of the legislature's efforts to pass an act promoting equity in agriculture. This bill was created by BIPOC for BIPOC. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. We cannot fully address the climate crisis without prioritizing those who have historically been marginalized and have traditionally been left out of the discussion around creating, advancing, and implementing agriculture policy. Furthermore, let us not forget that modern-day regenerative agriculture methods are derived from traditional agricultural practices implemented by Indigenous communities for thousands of years. It is imperative that the voices of our BIPOC communities be centered in discussions around climate resiliency. Finally, I'd like to thank NOFA Mass for the opportunity to be here today. It's great to share space with farmers and ag organizations across the state and country that are actively working to make our planet a better place. I look forward to today's discussion, and I'll turn it back over to you, Marty.
Thank you so much for those words, Chelsea. Pass it over to Jeff and then Ariana, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jeff Cole. I'm an Ag Network Coordinator of the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative. The collaborative supports collective action towards an equitable, sustainable, resilient, and connected local food system in Massachusetts. We envision a system where everyone has access to healthy food, to land to grow food, to good jobs, and to the systems where policy decisions are made. Policy is essential to systemic change. How we regulate, invest in, and set goals for the food system has broad and lasting impact on people, businesses, and the environment. We seek policy that supports local food producers as well as consumers, and that promotes equity. We build coalitions to develop policy ideas, lead and participate in advocacy campaigns, educate the public about the value of a healthy local food system, and seek to amplify the creative and successful work of local food system innovators. And I want to thank you all for being here and give a special shout out to Ellie Vaughn, Jeremy Plotkin, Jim Schultz, and Karen Schwabe, who are going to be helping us from the collaborative, invited by the collaborative.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Jeff. Ariana, and then I'm looking to see if we got Nataka with us. Ariana, and then Nataka, please.
Thanks, Marty. Hi, it's great to be here with you all. My name is Ariana. I use she, her pronouns. I have a small CSA veggie farm in central New York on unceded Gayakono territory, and I also serve as Associate Director of Grassroots Organizing at the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, which goes by the acronym of NSAC. NSAC is a national network of organizations like NOFA and CISA, and a couple of other you probably hear on the call, that collaborate to advocate to make federal policy work better for sustainable agriculture. So I'm going to just really quickly talk to you a little bit about what that looks like in terms of climate policy this year, because this is actually a really big year for federal advocacy on food and ag issues, because the current farm bill, the single biggest piece of US federal food and farm policy, expires next year. So this is the year that we start gearing up to change and influence the next one. And one big tool that we use to do that is we collaborate with members of Congress to introduce pieces of legislation that we actually call marker bills that end up shaping what goes in that final bill, which is very big and hard to influence as a whole without strategies like this. So one of those marker bill pieces of legislation that's got tons of climate related agriculture provisions is a bill that has been introduced by Congresswoman Shelley Pingree of Maine called the Agriculture Resilience Act. or the ARA. And the Ag Resilience Act does a whole bunch of things. For example, expanding some of the existing conservation programs you may be familiar with, like the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, or the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP. Expanding these programs, giving them a new focus on climate-friendly soil health practices. It does things like support infrastructure for pasture-based livestock, increases support for farmland protection, supports more climate and agriculture related research, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So one way that we get these cool provisions into the final farm bill is we get support from members of Congress. And I'm happy to report that in Massachusetts, Congressman McGovern and Moulton are already co-sponsors, or they were last time it was introduced in the previous legislative session, but no one else from Massachusetts has done that. So that's an easy place to start if you're looking for a way to support climate and federal policy, is get some more Massachusetts folks in support of that bill. And then another big thing that we see as an important place for advocates to plug into getting support for climate-friendly ag practices into the next farm bill is just going to be to have farmers sharing their stories, both about like what climate change looks like on your farm, what kind of climate-friendly practices you are already using, and what those are doing, what those are doing to change your operations, but also like how your farm would benefit from a program that helped you with more support for soil conservation, or like ag research, climate and ag research. How would that affect your farm, and to share those stories among your networks, on your social media if you do that kind of thing, with your local media like your newspapers or radio stations, through things like letters to the editor, op-eds, press releases, or even like getting interviewed. And then you can also plug into the work we do. We bring farmers to DC to share their stories. We feature you on our blog. And of course, you can work with the rest of the organizers here at NOFA Massachusetts. It's a great place to plug in. So I'm just going to share a link in the chat for NSAC's Take Action page, where you can you can plug in to support the Agriculture Resilience Act, or sign up for future action alerts, and I'll see you in the federal policy related breakout later on. Thanks all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ariana. I'll kick it over to Stephen.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen. I work at CISA, Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture. Nice to see some faces of folks whose email addresses I've only seen at this point. I've only been at CISA for about 4 months, and I'm really thankful to be here, especially because CISA's work on climate policy is really just starting. So I would say as an organization, it's something that we're trying to come up to speed with, and really eager to join in the work that needs to be done in that arena. And I'd like to just share my screen with you, and I have just a few slides to look at together. So as I said, I work at Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, and I'm not going to go into it today, but if you were to go to our website and have a look at the strategic plan, I think you would hopefully agree that as an organization, really the mission is completely aligned with supporting examples of farming practices that are in line with climate change adaptation and can be used to influence and inform policy. And I think that's one way we look forward to working on policy issues, through what's actually happening on the ground amongst our members. Most of you know CISA through the Local Hero program, which is a very widely run campaign to help consumers identify where produce is coming from, and farms and farm businesses can carry this logo to alert consumers to the fact that they are a local operation. And this in itself we consider sort of a policy of the organization, if you will. And it might not be legislative policy, but we're taking a real broad approach to what policy means, including what we do as an organization, where we invest our resources, and that starts even with policies such as running and investing in this kind of program. I will basically be not focused solely on policy. I will be also providing technical assistance to farmers, but little by little, policy will be an area that we'll be working through the climate program. One area that maybe some of you have participated with at some point in an area where, as I said, we haven't been working directly on climate policy, but we have been engaging through organizing legislative farm tours, where a legislator will ask CISA to put together a series of visits to farms so that the legislators can visit together and listen directly to farmers, which is really a strength that we have as an organization. And as we can see here, legislators need to hear just how hard the work is that farmers are doing. And so getting them in direct contact is an important part of policy work. We also run an emergency farm fund. These are donations that the organization has decided to direct toward farmers that by and large are experiencing climate change effects already. So again, this is an internal policy to direct resources in this direction. And that is actually open now. If any farmers here are interested, they can contact me. We have provided about $400,000 in no interest loans to about 45 farmers over the last 7 years. And 6 of those years, they have been climate related events that have necessitated the fund to be activated. We are also now making available climate change adaptation grants for farmers through the Lookout Foundation. And finally, well, maybe that is the last one. Yeah, my office mates wouldn't let me come here without just putting a plug into our local program enrollment period being opening now. And being a part of this program will allow you to access some of the support we're giving around climate change and hopefully get you to participate in some of the policy work that we're doing. And in closing, I would like to thank, we invited Abby Furla from Foxtrot Herb Farm. She's with us here today, and she'll be sharing some of her experiences shortly. We have Michael Doctor from Winter Roots and Fred Vidal from Pie in the Sky. So thank you to all 3 of you farmers for being here, taking time out on your Sunday to let us know what's going on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, I do want to give a shout out to our NOFA Mass farmers here in attendance. We got Lincoln Sawyer at Sawyer Farm, Jen Salonetti at Woven Roots Farm, and Julie Rawson at Many Hands Organic Farm. And so glad you all can join us. About to kick it into our conversation. I want to check, do we have Nataka present or Pat? I don't know if you want to come on and introduce Urban Farming Institute. Just trying to find you here. Oh, we got Apollo here. Apollo, you want to come on and introduce UFI?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I'm surprised Nataka is not on because we were talking about this earlier. Anyhow, the Urban Farming Institute is located near the farm that I manage, and that's in between. That's right there on the border of Dorchester and Mattapan, and it has trained a lot of the urban farmers in Boston. And it's terrific program project, and there's a running a training program every summer. I went through it in 2015, and we definitely are day to day are living the environmental connection between what we do and climate change, and those are, so as others have noted, so intimately related. And one of the things that we really do in the urban farming space, really engage the folks in the neighborhood so that they can become more aware and become advocates for climate smart and everything that is climate that contributes to a better climate for us. So, and that matters a lot, especially since we are dealing with the heat island effect. We have through different organizations that are part of that space, we have engaged in significant tree planting as a way of mitigating the heat island effect. And on we go. People are listening. I would love to, regarding something like the farm bill, I would love to get folks in the neighborhood to write letters to our congressional delegation, which is, they're the choir actually, right? But just to make it known, because we need all hands on deck in terms of doing something, contributing something, and just be increasing the awareness, because that matters.
Thank you so much, Apollo. So glad you're here. And so that's our round of introductions. So you know who we have in this space as far as advocates go. And I also know that we have a wealth of wisdom in this room, represented by our farmers and conference attendees and food activists. And so we have about an hour left, and this is really where we're going to dig into it. That's it for the presentation. We really want to hear from the folks that are here, and again, centering the farmer voices and those that we made special invitation to know who you are, and you probably have some things to help frame our conversation here. So our note takers, thank you to our note takers who will be keeping notes in our Jamboard, which we'll do a screen share. I think Jason will share it up there so we can see the notes live. And we'll kick it off really just asking, what can we do? I mean, what are some of the challenges and opportunities for representing the voices of farmers in the climate conversation? And if folks want, again, making room for our farmer voices, if you want to either raise your hand or put name in the chat, or just go on, take your mic off and kick us off. We'd love to hear some thoughts to get us going. Who's going to start?
I can start. This is Ellie Vaughn here. Here, let me turn on my video. Hi, my name is Ellie. I'm owner of Phoenix Fruit Farm in Belchertown. I've been farming for about 15 years. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great, thank you. So, I mean, I just wanted to, the one comment that's kind of been on the top of my mind listening here is just to acknowledge that, most farmers want to do everything they can to mitigate climate change, but the problem is that those practices are more expensive than conventional practices. So those of us who are, using those practices, the alternative, more ecological, more climate change combative practices are doing so at our own personal expense. And that needs to be honored, because there are so many reasons that farmers are in crisis right now, and climate change is only one of a litany of things that are making it harder and harder to continue farming. And I think that any policy that comes along needs to acknowledge that. And, basically what it comes down to is that farmers need financial support, and they need it in a very open and free form. And so far, I've taken advantage of several grant programs during my career as a farm owner, and none of them has been, money to pay people a living wage, money to just, use good practices, rebates just for, say you're a farmer that does carbon sequestration, there should be direct payments to those people for doing that work, because it doesn't really financially benefit any of us. So I'm gonna leave it at that, because there's a lot of other people who I'm sure want to talk, but that's just my thoughts. So thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Really appreciate that. And I definitely I hear that. Yeah, if anyone else has anything to share now, we certainly, we do want, I mean, we're going to hear some policy recommendations, certainly in this conversation. But as we're thinking of policy recommendations, really, we want to hear, how can we get those policy recommendations, the voices of farmers making those policy recommendations? How can we get those voices to lawmakers, to decision makers? How can we as advocates make that process easier?
You should also say farmers, not just
Yeah, farmers and farm workers and everyone working the soil. Fred, would you like to go?
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Ellie. I really appreciate what Ellie just said. You know, I hated to be the first skunk at the garden party, but it seems like there might be like a herd of skunks if the farmers start speaking, because money is something that is hard to discuss. But just for example, I mean, a lot of grant opportunities that farmers get, essentially, it's like if you're given money to build a greenhouse, you turn around and pay the contractor to put the greenhouse up. So essentially, it's a grant that goes to the contractor, not to the farmer. So yeah, we need to be getting direct payments for all of the kinds of conservation practices that we're doing, and they're expensive. If you want to put an acre of compost down, it's $1,000. So let's do that. And also, well, I could use up this whole session to go on various rants and get down into like various weeds, but I think one of the issues that I see about representing farmers is that in the public mind, a farmer is a person who owns the farmland, lives in the farmhouse, and maybe doesn't even have any employees other than family members. And this is true very occasionally, but mostly what is true in Massachusetts and in the Valley is quite different. And that is that most farmers don't even own their land. I would say 50% of the farmland in Massachusetts is farmed by people who don't own it. And there's many layers to this. It's quite interesting. A lot of, if you see cornfields or potato fields as you drive around the Pioneer Valley, chances are whoever is growing those potatoes, that corn, does not own that land. But they also probably don't actually have a lease. There's probably a handshake agreement. But the farm land resource is very precious, and it's being eroded all the time. And this is something which doesn't benefit the farmers who use the land or rent the land, but it benefits landowners. And many of these landowners are not farmers. So there's a real skew between organizations. Like, I would say the Farm Bureau really represents farmland owners and farmers who own land, but not this other category is sort of outside of the box. And CISA does a great job of representing farm business owners, of which I am one, and I really appreciate their work. And I also appreciate NOFA. And we guys, we're kind of the left wing of the farming community, obviously. And we need to get together with the Farm Bureau people, because we're all brothers and sisters here in this farming business, and there is a schism. And I would like to see that schism healed, but I know it's not easy. So that's another barrier to our making progress in managing this. And maybe the last thing I'll just mention, I mean, I could go on and on, is something that Ellie also talked about, which is money to the people doing farming, because farmers is also in the public imagination. A farmer is the landowner, or the white man who drives the tractor. But I would say 85% of the people who do farming are farm workers. They are farmers, and they don't necessarily benefit in any way from the various programs and incentives and financial benefits that go to the landowners or the business owners. But they're a very critical piece of this picture, and we need to figure out ways to get money into their hands and their pockets. That's all I'll say for the moment, but I could go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was a lot in there, and I see our note takers working furiously to get it down. And I'm glad we have this recorded. Thank you so much, Fred. That's a lot to chew on there. Great. Let's see anyone else in the hopper. I gotta see our full screen.
There are some hands up, and then there are also some comments in the chat.
Great.
I see Esther's hand up. Esther Noel.
Can you mute yourself?
Hello, thank you. Thank you for, I greatly appreciate the input that our colleague just made up, because I am a farmer, but I don't own my own land, and I rent land to farm. But the biggest issue I encounter is that most of the time you put all the work and we don't really have the full benefits of our works, because like he says previously, all the benefit go to the landowner, and we as farmer who who went to all the dilemma of farming, and we don't really have to taste a slice of the cake. That was really, really interesting, because I'm a living example of that myself. So my question is, how we can implementing better law to not only help farmer who own lands, and also farmer who renting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, let's keep it going. I have Abby on stack, and then Jeremy.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for this panel. I really appreciate the question. And I know the assignment was to come with opinions, and I have some, but I actually really wanted to hear from the advocates before getting into how to boost farmers' voices in the climate conversation. If that's the question, I want to hear, like, are you all finding that it's challenging to get farmer voices in the conversation? Like, what was the thought behind this panel? Like, what? Sure. Like, it might be helpful for us to hear what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Thanks.
Cool. All right, flip it right back at us. Thank you, Abby. I'll say, I'll speak from my perspective. I'll invite the other panelists to come on as well. I just know that in conversations, between us, I've often heard it remarked that there's no clear vehicle. There's not a go-to forum that policymakers look for, that advocates look for, that's where that voice is represented. We have, several agricultural advocacy organizations, represented here. We have others who aren't here, and there isn't a well-known or prominent vehicle for farmers' voices in the climate conversation that say, when 350 has something, or one of the big climate groups, who do they go to when they want to incorporate farmers' voices? And so really it's about trying to address that, whether that means it's going to be one of our respective organizations that fills that niche, or it's a interorganizational collaborative. But that's sort of the origins of this conversation. And to speak to our experience engaging, farmers are busy. We're lucky if we can get you. We got you here, and really it's this time of year is the only time that we can do that. And unfortunately, when it comes to like comment periods and hearings and other things, they don't follow the agrarian cycle so much. So we definitely have timing challenges when it's in the middle of the season and we need to generate voices. So that speaks to a couple of things. We know that you all are busy, and we really value your time and want to streamline that process. So if any panelists want to share.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and I agree with everything you said, Marty. I think at the collaborative level, we see sporadic collaboration, and we think there's room for more intentional and more intensive collaboration with all the ag advocacy groups, so that the messages can be a little bit more uniform, hopefully. And yeah, getting farmers involved has been sometimes a challenge, depending on the time of the year. One of the things that we hear continually from legislators are they really want to hear the personal story. If you send a canned response that one of us creates, yes, they'll look at it, but it goes into the bucket of, well, it's the same response, so it's sort of like one response. And honestly, what we hear is that 10 or 15 different responses is a game changer. It moves the needle, and I guess what I think we're hearing is that legislators don't always get just 10 or 15, which does indicate that somehow we're not getting the farmer participation that might be more helpful.
So this is Jim Schultz from Red Shirt Farm. If I could just jump in for a second. On that point, the Healthy Soils bill that when it was brought up, and NOFA went out of their way to contact, I know Lincoln Fishman, who's on here, and Jeremy Barker Plotkin, and myself, and a number of other farmers, and arranged meetings with legislators, arranged an opportunity for us to speak and really made a day of it, focusing on farmers and farmers' stories. And I know, in talking with my representatives afterward, they were moved by that immensely, especially the stories that were told that day. And I think, farmers being as busy as they are, and also myself, just somewhat out of touch, with what is happening at the policy level with legislation, to be made aware of those, of that, how we can participate, and then also to be directly brought in for situations just like Marty arranged for us with the Healthy Soils bill. That was, immensely empowering to myself, and I also think it helped get that bill through. So I think if there's any way for the activists on this call to organize situations like that, I think it would be very helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I appreciate the shout out on that. And that was in the before times, February of 2020. And I do look forward to being able to bring farmers to the State House again someday. But yes, great suggestion.
Hi, John.
I'm sorry?
Can I say something?
Sure, go right ahead. I'm not sure who's speaking. Go ahead.
This is Lincoln from Sawyer Farm.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jim said. I think when we were there, just you organized that, Marty, was lovely in sharing that story. I'm curious. I appreciate Abby's question, because I think some of being here is a little bit like not entirely sure what feedback you guys are looking for, and so this idea of our stories being important, just sort of the idea of potentially generating a place where we can share our climate struggles without needing to present any solutions necessarily. I'm just not a policy person. I don't know, very difficult for me to kind of sit down and be like, what should be happening. And direct payments would be sweet, but I could punch a bunch of holes in why that might not be a super effective policy, broadly, which is just throwing money at individual farmers and hoping they do the right thing with it. But if the question is, can we share our stories and challenges? If there was a repository for that, someplace where we could, come together, run through one or the other of these organizations, it might be that we could get decent participation from farmers kind of across the whole spectrum here, writing in and just saying, certainly for us, we have some very specific climate related challenges that are different than when we started farming 15 years ago. Really feeling climate change, active on our farm at this point. Same thing with the CISA's farm visits. Having legislators come out has been awesome. Natalie Blay came out to our place, and I think Natalie's more in touch because she's from out here, but especially for people from out east to actually see a farm again, like they're the policy people. I don't know, what to say, but I'm very happy to host and sort of share my specific experiences. And then finally, I think if there were some, if eventually stuff gets generated that we could respond to, that to me feels a little more like the order of operations that makes sense to me, if that makes sense. So like, would X, Y, or Z program help you, or rank these in order of, what you think might be useful to farm?
Great suggestions. Thank you, Lincoln. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to call on Jen next, and then Apollo.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you for everyone that's here. It's really great to be in this space with you. And I'm thinking there's plenty that I could echo of what people have already said. And I appreciate this impressive note taking that's happening before my eyes. I think I'll highlight some areas that are just resonating for me now. Is one, just thinking about how little, myself as an individual, prior to meeting Marty really and doing the work that I've been doing with NOFA Mass, of like how little I knew about how advocacy worked and just how our basic system, as broken and messed up as it is, works through and how like my voice as a farmer even matters. Oops. So sorry. And so I think that was a huge eye turner for me. You know, even just hearing someone speaking before about, you know, what it means to get some personal letters, and how 15 letters, personal letters, rather than the like rote kind of email ones, has such an impact on our legislatures. I would not have known that, you know, and I think that having that kind of cohesive information and shared knowledge about our system is huge for me to know that my voice matters. And then I'll add to that in saying that just, you know, I really appreciate hearing of different organizations that are focusing on bringing, you know, equity into the space, and that into their work. And I am very proud of the work specifically that NOFA Mass has been doing, that I've been a part of over the last several years now. And I think that at the same time, it's very real for me to recognize that anytime I have put myself out there as a person, as a farmer, as a BIPOC farmer, as someone who identifies as a woman, you know, it's terrifying to be in space where there has been so much historical harm and so much active placement to keep those of us that are oppressed in the oppressed situation. And I know that farmers can resonate that and on some level around that, but there's a different space that BIPOC hold within this. And it's imperative that we are seeing more people like us that are on the end of legislator that can hear us and center our voice, and not and that we can be in a place where we feel safe to do so. And it's not easy, but I think that it's something that I don't hear being spoken about enough. And that I hear that we more folks and more organizations saying that we need to center BIPOC voices, and within that, there's so much work that has to be done internally as individuals and as organizations in order for us to show up and feel safe and seen and heard.
Thank you so much, Jen. Let's see, we got Apollo up next. Apollo, and then Ulum.
I want to first of all thank you, Marty, for doing such great work and for even reaching out to me. I was not able to help you out the way that you asked me to, but I still appreciate that what you're doing, and that's really important. That you're helping us tell the stories, and the Healthy Soil bill was phenomenal. I was so a little surprised that it passed, but I know that it passed because of the work that you did and others did as well, who stepped up. But what I also want to add to the discussion, I'm all in favor of direct payments, and I want to make sure that we also include urban farms in those direct payments. There's a lot of things that farmers do that benefit the climate and can benefit climate, and that we don't get paid for. And that's even more so in the urban areas where there is a significant heat island effect operating every year, and it's increasing. And when we are engaged in urban farming, and we help our neighbors take care of the trees and inspire them to take care of the trees, and inspire them to maybe not blacktop their yards, we're contributing to the climate smart farming and awareness. And I think that that's important. And likewise, when we engage in tree planting campaigns, and we build raised beds and get people growing in the yard, we are the organizations that are leading this are the urban farmers. and we should be creative about how we about direct payments, including the eco servicing. That's real. And and the other point that I want to make, it is, you know, the success of urban farmers can be the success of all farmers, especially the smaller farmers or those that are leasing their land in the rural areas. Because if we collaborate, then we could all benefit from that collaboration. Obviously, urban farmers are limited because of the space that we grow in, but we can really be great partners to larger farmers in getting that produce into the city, and where there are larger markets, not perfect markets. But I would end on this note that the Oasis on Baloo, the farm that I manage, participates at the Codman Square Summer Farmers Market. We also do it in the winter, and we're doing it outside, maybe starting next week. But that farmers market generated over $70,000 for 3 farmers, and most of it went to a big farmer out of Grafton. But we also benefit from that, and that was made possible through coupons that were provided by the City of Boston Food Access, and that was only that program. Of course, there was SNAP and other coupon programs and cash, but that was quite an amazing amount of transaction for this market. So I think that gives us an idea that collaboration is good for all farmers, and collaboration between urban farmers and rural farmers in particular.
Collaboration, that's why we're here. Thank you so much, Apollo. See, I think we have Alum on stack, and folks, if you just want to use the raise hand function to get on stack, we'll do our best to catch them in order.
Actually, you want to give the space to Pat. So pass it to Pat.
Oh, hi, how are you? And fabulous conference. And it's just been a pleasure for the last 2 days. Just a couple of comments. When we talk, I love everybody that's talked about stories. That's what it's all about. As we tell the legislature our stories, particularly in the urban farming space, I say farmers come and tell their stories alongside our neighbors purchasing our produce, or the produce that we're giving to our neighbors. And so that the legislature can see exactly where it's going and hear from both the farmer and maybe a neighbor that's benefiting from this. Because particularly in the urban farming space, we are connected to our neighbors at the hip. And so if we're talking about climate change, we're actually, as Apollo mentioned, trying to build as many raised beds as possible, trying to get as many people involved in our growing programs as possible, trying to get as many people to our farms to volunteer as possible, because in those ways, we're able to truly share what we're doing as farmers, but also bring neighbors along to talk about climate change. A lot of the terminology that we'll use in this particular session, my neighbor next door doesn't know any of this climate change terminology. So we need to continue to work with the people closest to us that desperately need the food in urban spaces that do not have local supermarkets, but we need to bring them all along together as we try to solve some of the complex problems due to climate change. Also, just jumping back, for farmers at times to be able to even have this conversation, I look for more dollars for management training of our farmers. I look for more dollars to pay for health benefits, long-term disability, things that are just crucial that all of our farmers don't have, but crucial to not our well-being. So, as we talk about soil and nutrients and regeneration, you got to do the same thing with the people. So what are we doing to feed our people, feed our farmers? And so that's of critical importance to me too. And then I say this to everybody, we're in month 24 of COVID. We need to look at more programming. And again, can the legislature help us with this? I'm on a bit of a tangent, but more programming for the overall health and well-being of our farmers. And that's every farmer. We've been trying to do this and pivot and all those wonderful words we've been using for 24 months, but who now is giving back to the farmers that are just working their butts off at this point? So that's just another comment I'd like to make. And as far as collaboration, someone had mentioned, a couple of people, collaboration. Collaboration is a wonderful word, but a lot of us have just said, can we just talk on a Zoom? Not even use the word collaboration. Can we have a space where there is no agenda and we can just talk with each other? We just don't get to talk with each other enough. That's all I'll say for now.
Yeah, Pat, and forgive me, guys, and if this is a closed session or open session for people to be able to speak, but definitely want to resonate on all that you have said, including like, you know, when we were in first like kind of initial relationship with NRCS, you know, they were like, yo, we got 50 old year policies and we're trying to figure out how to best support new direction and new futures. And we need feedback and we need, you know, and how. And so one of the things that was very, very clear to me, which is some of what Pat was speaking about, and this is Nataka from the Urban Farming Institute, and forgive me for not being on, that came up earlier, for being on earlier, but was, you know, how does, you know, how are people included in environment, you know, and the way that we think about organizations, but how do people get to be included in the environment? Because a lot of people from across the state from NRCS was like, yo, these policies are old and yes, we can help you do a greenhouse. Yes, we can help you have some, you know, water retention strategies and XYZ, but like, what else can we do? So like, we're not the only ones who are asking the question around what can we do? And so I think the more conversations we have, the better. And it should include all creatures who exist in the environment around climate. You know what I'm saying? Like, and how does climate affect all of us, which includes birds and bees and people and, you know, other things, you know, us to be able to grow in climate, but like really in terms of shifting the environment and how we get to take care of the environment and what practices that we use and share, because like Pat said, like, yo, our people ain't talking about no climate change. You'd be like, climate change? Like, what's climate change? It's cold. I get to pay a bill and that's it, right? Like all other points of that on a broader scale are not there. Most of our people, so like realizing, you know, where we are as people is really integral to our conversations about how we really get to be, even as farmers, because we're people, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's like, and simple people. Most of us, like, you try to use minimum in order to do X, Y, Z, but have access to, you know, all this new technology and all these things that we've learned and stuff. But like, at the end of the day, if we really want to think about talking about climate, it's a varied conversation. And then how do we get our people to, like, how do we as farmers get to have a conversation in climate policy, I think is essential. And I think we all have some ideas and thoughts about that. So we should put that forward, make a list. So I'm not going to interrupt that list. And then how do we also get to invite our communities to, you know, these possibilities of places and spaces around conversation around climate, which everyone has a part in and can play a part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nataka. So we're just about the time where we were thinking we would shift to breakouts, but we've had Jeremy and Karen on stack for quite a bit here. Thank you for your patience. I want to offer them opportunity to share some comments, and then I'll just check in with folks on where the energy's at. If we want to get into smaller groups to make more room for more voices, we do have that in the plan. So Jeremy, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Marty, and thanks for pulling this together. This is great. I kind of wanted to really, Ellie, the first person that spoke said exactly what I wanted to say, but I wanted to kind of back it up with story, some of my story. We've been trying to transition to reduced and no-till on our farm, and we've gotten some support for that for sure. We got an acre grant that paid for 80% of some expensive equipment that we got. But in the learning curve and the kind of transition into a really a new system, we're really kind of reinventing how we farm by going to no-till. We had some significant crop loss this year, like, several thousands of dollars. I can't quite quantify it, but significant crop loss. And there's no support for that. And it's really in the context of a business where we can't afford to pay our crew, enough so that it's competitive for them to work for us as opposed to like Target or Cumberland Farms, as opposed to our farm. So support, I think support for practices that doesn't just, it's not just a minimum, it has to like support quality of life for the farmers as well. We also had like a pollinator habitat planting that we wanted to put in, and we went to NRCS for funding for that. And we're motivated. We really want to do that, put that practice in, but the funding wasn't really enough even to cover the costs, for someone that's motivated and wants to do it. So we're not putting that practice in at this point. So direct support, I think, for farmers, for practices that are, providing ecosystem benefits and really other community benefits as well is what I'm advocating for. Thanks again for doing this.
Always so good to have you in the conversation. Thank you, Jeremy. Karen.
I wanted to kind of follow back to what Jim was talking about, and it's that farmer communication aspect of it. I mean, this is maybe for most farmers, the sweet time of year to have this conversation, but it doesn't follow a legislative calendar. And there's also kind of an inertia of not knowing how to talk to legislators and not knowing how valuable their stories are. And I think working with farmers when they have the time to be able to talk about what their experience is, maybe in a solution-oriented way that is helpful for legislators to wrap their minds around, or even to be able to just have that relationship with their legislators to be able to, just to talk more informally. And then there's the feedback to the farmers. Newsletters are great, websites are great, but most of the year farmers don't have time to really dig back into the legislative issues. And so just maybe even finding a way to make phone calls to the farmers. We know you're interested in this. This is what's up. This is where it's at, so that farmers are able to participate in a way that works for them and their schedules.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. So we're at 3:05 here. We got 25 minutes left for this session, and we have a few hands that are still up, and folks even coming into the Zoom. And so we do have the opportunity to get into smaller groups. We wanted to be able to make room for more voices, so people can speak. Do we want to just get a show of maybe if someone want to say in the chat, or just give another indication? Do folks feel like there's energy for smaller group discussions? See, Jim says let's stay as one group. Not wed either way, but I just didn't know if we have a lot of people holding off and want to make more room. We do have 25 minutes and only 4 people with their hands up right now. All right, I think we have two. All right. If I went with the majority that I saw right now, it's pretty strong leaning to one group. So I think we'll call that the quick sample there. So I'm sorry if you wanted to get into breakouts, but this is an emergent process and we're doing it live. So let's see. I had John Duke up on stack. John.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Marty. Thank you, NOFA Mass, for doing all this. I'll keep this kind of quick. I do I think that there's another part of this, which is bringing value back to what farmers are doing. And, you know, for some strange reason, our society is willing to pay thousands of dollars for a phone, but not maybe the true value of food. So, you know, somehow I feel like we're either going to, you know, subsidize the farmers, or we can change the marketplace, and possibly without making it exclusive. But how do we bring, you know, that real value back to what it actually costs, you know, these farmers between the time and labor to produce food that's worth consuming? So there is that, you know, mindset that we kind of do need to work on within the marketplace, or else we possibly have to subsidize this so that we can have food that's worth eating in our communities, without, you know, making that market exclusive and making this food, you know, too expensive for those that might be living in a food desert. So I guess it's kind of like that sliding scale concept that we've kind of incorporated into NOFA for ticket prices for these kinds of events. But I, you know, we're talking a lot about subsidies and support, but I think we also do need to somehow, you know, change the mindset of the market. And, you know, food shouldn't be cheap. As you all know, it takes a lot, especially if we're thinking about growing food that's worth eating, you know, for our communities. So that's another part of it that, I don't know, somehow we, you know, do need to keep that conversation going as well. Thank you all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. We'll have Lenore and then Bart, please.
Hi, everybody. I was trying to wait. I didn't want to speak before all the farmers' voices, which is what this is about, but I will speak now. John, I was just going to say what you said. So I'm so glad that you said that. And the value of healthy food and healthy farmers, back to what somebody else was saying, and healthy consumers, and to reframe the conversation around climate, because I think people's eyes glaze over when they start to hear about greenhouse gas emissions and this many degrees and but that it's about health, that it's about a healthy person, a healthy planet, a healthy community on every level, and that we're basically sick as individuals and as a society. We're ill, and climate is just a symptom of this illness that starts with not knowing we have what we need, not valuing what we really are and what we have. And so we value things that are not really valuable, and to reframe the conversation that everybody can relate to. And what I wanted to say was, we have an organization in Western Mass that I co-founded, that that some of our members are part of the policy committee, that is a bridge between regenerative farming and farmers and food advocates and the climate movement in Massachusetts. We're part of Climate Action Now, which is sort of the voice of 350.org in Western Mass. And we started this to be that bridge, to give voice in the climate movement to people who love the land and are trying to regenerate ecosystems. Because at least for me, when I started it, I saw that the climate movement was sorely lacking in that health perspective, and was just talking about energy renewables and not about ecosystem regeneration and farming and forests and food systems. So I just want farmers to know, I mean, we do partner with NOFA Mass, but I'd like it to be a bigger partnership on more levels. We have talks that reach the public, that are recorded, that we can have more farmers' voices in those talks. We could maybe find, some college students to do some interviews for people that can't do it in person, but to have personal stories recorded. I love the idea of these legislative sessions that Marty has done in the past to speak with policymakers. I think there's a lot of possibilities to bring policymakers, consumers, climate activists, farmers, all at the same table, maybe not at the same time, but for that we have ways to create this network and this bridge that already are there, but there's not enough of us talking to each other. So I just wanted to, and I know Marty knows about us, but I just wanted to remind us that there already is some networking available across the state and across the region that we could take advantage of. So anyway, my name's Lenore Brick, and I am with the Regenerative Farming, Forest and Food Systems group of Climate Action Now. And we, as much as we can, we're a small group, we are at your disposal because we do honor what you do and we love you and appreciate you.
You all do amazing work, and it's really great to have you here, Lenore. Thank you so much. It's great to be in coalition with you. And I'm just doing my best to even just scroll through the comments here in the chat. There's a lot of good stuff in there that we're gonna have to digest and get incorporated to these notes here. Keep it coming. I'm happy to see some connections being made here and some really great ideas, and this is why we're here. So we got I got Bart and then Ellie and then Robert now up on stack. Bart?
Yeah, I understood the question of this workshop. One of them was how to get farmers' voices into the policy discussions. And the thing that came immediately to my mind is regularly surveying farmers about problems they're actually having related to climate change and what resources and help they need. And then turning those stories into little videotape stories and also survey data that determine how many other farmers are having the same problem. So you have a kind of policy look at, like, if we've got, 50% of farmers having that problem, that's a policy problem. And the solution is also a policy and funding problem. But first, you got to hear from farmers when they're having problems and help them solve that problem with what's already in existence, and then document that problem as a story that can then be conveyed. And it takes a case management philosophy as a policy organization, which is not usually how policy organizations work. They don't talk regularly to people when they're having problems about what those problems are and what they need, and they don't document that. And the Extension Service is great at solving problems, but they can't do policy stuff. They can't turn those stories into surveys, into reports, into policy proposals. So that was my suggestion, is get grants to actually help farmers, because they are really busy. And if you can't help them through a problem, they're not going to spend a lot of time telling you about the problem if at the end of the conversation, there's no solution. Like, I've just given you a bunch of information, but I'm still got the problem. So now I got to go find somebody who can help me.
Right. Wow. There's a lot to think about in that one, Bart. Thank you for that. You mentioned surveys, and I don't know if maybe it's a follow-up question, and maybe our advocates have a similar experience, but surveys are challenging. It's challenging to get participation in surveys. And I don't know if as a follow-up, if anyone has suggestions for how to increase farmer participation in those surveys, or if it's just a matter of consolidating them so there's less of them. But we certainly want to get that kind of input. And I think that is part of the one of the challenges, is just even getting responses on those kind of things. So put that out there if anyone has a solution, but love to hear it. I have Ellie and Robert up next. Ellie?
Yeah, hey, thanks. So I did just want to make a couple comments around the issue of, the disconnect between what people expect to pay or can afford to pay for food and what it actually costs to produce food. And, I like acknowledging that part of it is educating the consumer, but I think that most of it is it's unfair to expect farmers and farm workers and low-income families to bear the burden of solving this problem with their own funds. In the wealthiest country in the world, where we can spend hundreds of billions of dollars bailing out corporate entities when they, falter, we can put money, we can invest in human health and the environment and climate change. And again, I know I said this earlier, but direct payments to farmers to pay workers a living wage is perhaps the single most effective solution to solving that issue. We already have some food stamp benefits, and in Massachusetts, we have a HIP program for low-income folks to get a certain amount of access to fresh fruits and vegetables, but there is still nothing to help farmers to pay people a living wage to do the very difficult and skilled work of bringing that food to people's tables. And if, there's this hesitation around the concept of direct payments because it seems like we're just throwing money at a problem, I just want to remind everyone that this country does that all the time, but they do it for corn farmers growing fuel. They do it for big banks. They do it for Wall Street. They do not do it for small family farms, and they could. And I want to really make sure that I don't see a whole lot in the notes about direct payments. And I wonder if there's some discomfort around really, this concept, because our culture really kind of around farmers is just, the proud farmer is expected to bear this burden alone. And there's a lot of shame in taking a handout, right? As a farmer, there's a culture around being self-sustaining, and there's a shame in but it's really not about just the farmer and about their sense of personal pride. It's about using every tool at our disposal to give our communities what they desperately need. And I think that there should be more discussion around that and less fear or shame around it.
Thank you. I almost want to end it there. That really says it. And, I'll say, when I heard you speak the first time, I did put in the notes support for payment for ecosystem services. And maybe that's a bit wonky, something to unpack, but that's the idea that our farmers and responsible soil stewards are providing a service to our ecosystem, to our communities, by being responsible stewards of the soil, but that they're not being compensated for that through what they're selling. So this whole idea of it is a direct payment for ecosystem services to provide a value and to pay farmers and soil stewards for workers, not just about the soil and the conservation, but the people, the farm workers who are on the ground destroying their bodies and, having to take government, assistance in order to do this work. It shouldn't have to be like that for them. All right. Well, let's broaden that then. Thank you so much. We are coming back towards the end. I wanted to leave room for closing comments and ahas and just some outgoing next steps from our advocates on things. Who did I have next? I'm sorry, I lost my window. I had Robert up. Robert, and then I think Robert, and then Ellen, we can close out. Robert.
Hi, everyone. Robert Chang from Echo Farm in Woodstock, Connecticut. Just really quickly, because I know we're running out of time. One of the things that I'm involved in the New Connecticut Farmer Alliance in Connecticut. We're a chapter of the National Young Farmer Coalition. There are a number of us in the organization who recently were appointed to various boards and working groups with the Department of Ag at the state level. And I think we've all been surprised, and not in a good way, of how policies have developed at the state level and how they impact new beginning small scale farmers. And one of the things that we're working on in our group is now that we are part of those discussions, we're trying to report back to our members what's taking place at those discussions and trying to educate our members about policy and how this affects them as farmers. And so one suggestion I'd like to make is, for those of you who are involved in policy, I know farmers are busy, but if you can get a farmer to be a member of some of these decision-making boards at the local, state, or federal level, and help shine some light on what's going on, it's a great way for farmers to be involved in that process and to become educated and to share that information with the larger ag community. And again, the second point I want to make is about changing the ag or food system economy. I think we on the slides, we have a lot of different challenges that farmers are facing and that are barriers to farmers implementing climate smart ag policies. And in my mind, I feel like the root cause for a lot of those challenges is the fact that we just don't make enough money. And in my mind, when a consumer goes to a grocery store, the cost of organic food should not be higher than the cost of conventionally produced food. It really should be the other way around, because as we all know, the externalities, the impacts of conventional agriculture is higher than than organic agriculture or climate smart ag practices. And I also think we should stop pretending that the food system that we currently have, the ag economy that we currently have, is a natural result of our market economy. I think what we have was intentionally designed and implemented by organizations like USDA and others in policy. And I think we shouldn't exclude the possibility of going back at those different policy levels and saying we need to fundamentally change the way that food is priced, so that the price of food and the cost of food for the consumer includes all of these other externalities that we're talking about: the impact on climate, the impact on human health, the impact on labor, and getting a fair wage to farmers and farm laborers, et cetera. And I think there are ways that we can try to get to that. I mean, we've talked in this country about carbon credits. We've talked in this country about taxing certain food items like sodas so that they're not the cheapest calories in the grocery store. I think there are other ways that we can approach this on a local, federal, state level to try to, again, rebalance our ag economy so that the cost of food that the consumer sees actually reflects the whole societal cost of producing that product. And again, we're not just a race to the cheapest calories. So thank you.
Right, that really hits it right there. Thank you so much, Robert. And I'm looking at the time here. I do want to give us the opportunity for our advocates to share any big ahas. I know we might have a couple of next steps already in the works that we want to make sure folks are aware of. And really, I just want to thank everyone. Really, I'm super energized and inspired by some of these great ideas and connections being made. And I want to let you know, this isn't just going into notes into a Google Drive and then just sitting there where our note takers are still going. We're going to be synthesizing this into a resource that all of us can use, the advocates here, and we also want to open source this. We'll send it out to any registrant so you can see what the output of the collective wisdom that we have here. And really, this is a beginning, I feel like, of inter-organizational effort between our advocates here represented. And I know that I think it was Fred who talked about healing the schism. That really is resonating for me. I think we need to be connecting with farmers and farm workers and everyone who's working with the soil and in our food system across the Commonwealth, and have these conversations and build these relationships. And I like the idea of some non-structured social time, maybe Zoom for now, but I look forward to some dinners and gatherings when we can do that again. So I want to pass it over. I don't know if Jeff, if you want to share a couple things on your way out.
I will. Thank you, Marty. Throughout this conversation, your facilitators threw the idea around of having a regular farmer roundtable to continue the conversation. I've talked with the rest of the staff at the Mass Food System Collaborative, and we are willing and will be starting to set up in some way, shape, or form a regular roundtable. We're looking for support in terms of we're not looking to own the space, we're looking to organize the space. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware that we're looking for support to bring the issues to the table, to bring the conversations forward. And I think ultimately what I heard today was, if we can focus on listening and collecting the stories, and I think bringing those back for, if you will, confirmation, and then working with those storytellers to get those messages to our policymakers, we will make a lot of inroads in this system. So that's what we're committed to trying to do.
Awesome. Really happy to hear that. And I very much look forward to working with the collaborative on that. Thank you, Jeff. Any other advocates want to jump in, share some closing thoughts, next steps, ahas, things that are going to be influencing our work going ahead?
Yeah, on behalf of CISA, I would just like to make sure folks know that we have an open door for our farmers in our community. So any kind of support you're looking for, I would highly encourage you to reach out. Whether it's some policy related thorn that you want to get out onto the airwaves or technical assistance, that's what we're here for. And I also would like to, in response to some of the comments right at the very close this afternoon, we are starting to survey our farmers on climate related matters. And so we've incorporated this into our local hero enrollment form, for example, which reaches hundreds of members. And I look forward to inserting further data points into other types of surveying that the organization does. So hopefully that will help us take the pulse of farmers in our region little by little. Hopefully it's a strong pulse.
Thank you, Stephen. Awesome. Happy to hear about that.
If I could just quickly make a plug for the Massachusetts Coordinated Soil Health Program, which is a collaboration of American Farmland Trust and with NOFA, as well as UMass, NRCS, and MDAR. And I just put a few links in the chat. We have a soil health producer survey. It takes 15 minutes. We ask some really specific questions about what you're doing and what your needs are around soil health. So filling that out is a great way to tell us what you need, and we will build programs based on it. And it also makes you eligible for things like free soil health testing, which we're providing this spring. What else? Micro grants, soil health micro grants, and other programs. So we'd love to have your input, farmers. And thanks, NOFA, for putting this on.
Jared, thanks for all your help in the notes too. Great to have you here. Any other closing?
Yeah, I would like to just add to what Caro said. So in addition to making sure that Governor Baker implements soil health and funding soil health, or the Governor Baker's implements funding soil health programs in this last round of American Rescue Act plan funds that he signed into law in December. I would also just like to say that what I heard today was that Massachusetts needs a comprehensive climate resiliency law or bill that goes beyond just soil health, but also includes funding for worker rights, funding for incentives to have farmers implement these practices, looking at the land access crisis, figuring out how we can get more worker protection out there. And there was a really interesting law passed in California during the 2021 session called AB 125, which was titled Economic Recovery, Healthy Food Access, Climate Resiliency Farms, and Worker Protection Bond Act. So, thinking about next steps, how can we work with all of you to bring all of the players to the table that would need to make something comprehensive like this happen in the state? And I look forward to, hearing what happens with the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative listening sessions. Happy to be more engaged in that. And you can always reach out to me if you want to share your story about how climate change is impacting your operation. It's always good to hear directly from farmers.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. If Nataka, Ariana, do you want to share any closing remarks or next steps?
Just gratitude to you all for sharing being so upfront about the challenges that you're facing and some of the real ideas that you have for addressing them, both from the policy side and from the advocacy side. It's really cool to hear from all of you. Thank you so much. And echoing Chelsea, also very open to hearing more stories about how climate change looks on your farm and what you're doing about it and your policy ideas. So I'll put my email in the chat again. And yeah, appreciate all of you taking the time to be here and get wonky with us.
Awesome. All right. Well, 3:32. We're in pretty good shape. Glad we got a lot in there. Wow. Nataka, do you have anything else to add? Close this out. I want to give you another chance. All right. Well, I really appreciate you all for your time and attention, your passion, and some of the really generative solutions that I see coming from this work. I look forward to continuing to build with our advocates here and anyone on this call who wants to get more involved. You now have our contact info, and we'll be sure to let you know about upcoming conversations hosted by the collaborative. With that, I'll kick it over to Rosemary to formally close this out. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you everyone so much for not only attending parts of the conference, but really being a part of the conference. Thank you. I just wanted a couple reminders. I know a number of folks asked for contact information and the chat has been so active, you may have missed it. That's okay. All of the contact information is actually in the program book. So if you go to the program book toward the back, there's contact information for all of the presenters, including the advocates at the roundtable today. And finally, I mentioned that chat. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So I want everyone to save that file. The way that you do that is you go to where you would type in a message and there are 3 little dots to the right. If you click that, there's an option to save chat and it will download a text file to your computer, probably to your downloads folder. If you end up having trouble with that, you can email me at rosemary@nofamass.org or marty@nofamass.org and we can help you get a copy of it. So thank you everyone so much. And have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.
And there is another roundtable coming up, right, on seed sovereignty?
On seed sovereignty, yes. At 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, half an hour. All right.
Grab a
Well,
snack.
Thank
Come
you,
on back.
everyone.
all right,
Thank
thanks
you,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you for
Thank
your
you,
time.
advocates. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, NOFA.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, NOFA. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
You guys rock. Good to see you, Carol.
Good to see you, NOFA. Great conference. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for the session.
Good to see you.